Bridget, can you do the roll call for me, please?
Teresa Bezade. Present. Rachel Chalesky. Michelle Coelho. On Zoom. Kate Panetta. Here. Gladys Cooper. Here. Lauren Daly.
Here.
Bridget Gergen. Here. Julie Miliano. Here. Ralph Pietropessa.
Present.
Albert Russo.
Present.
Luisa Zagotis Bridger. Here.
Recognitions?
Recognition.
No. Okay.
Okay.
So-
So, vote. No public, and there's no public participation either, so, is there anybody here that would like to speak? And you can sign up. Thanks. Consent calendar. Kate, can you make a motion?
I'll make a motion that the Board of Education approve the items on the consent calendar, exhibits 22-83 through 22-86 as recommended.
Second.
Moved by Kate, seconded by Gladys. Would you do a roll call vote, please?
Teresa Bezade. Yes.
Rachel Chalesky, Michelle Coelho. Kate Panetta,
Yes.
Gladys Cooper,
Yes.
Lauren Daly,
Yes.
Bridget Gergen, yes. Julie Miliano,
Yes.
Ralph Pietropessa,
Yes.
Albert Russo,
Yes.
Luisa Zagotis Bridger.
So moved. Do we have any educational staff representatives tonight? Student representatives? Okay. Action item A. Louisa, can you do that one for me, please?
Yes. I make a motion that the Board of Education approve the updated education specifications dated June 22nd, 2022 in the Danbury Career Academy in accordance with 22-87.
Second that motion.
Moved by Louisa, seconded by Virgin. Any discussion? Can you do a roll call vote for me again?
Teresa Bezade,
Yes.
Rachel Chalesky, Michelle Coelho,
Michelle?
Michelle, can you hear us?
Any way to raise the volume? She can hear you.
We're working on it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me go back to Michelle.
I'm just checking to see if she put it in here.
Yeah, the volume is what it is, Michelle, sorry.
All right, well, I can read it from, that's great.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Michelle, we're calling on you to see if you are a yes or no on the first action item.
Are you yes or no on the first action item?
Second action. sorry.
Second
Oh,
action.
first.
I was trying to actually hear her.
Yeah. Yeah, the music will roll.
I can hear it deliberate.
Just action item A, yes or no?
Can we please go back to what, can you please repeat it as well? I was trying to fix the volume and trying to chat over.
Yeah, it's in your packet, action item A.
Under 9.
Under another action.
I wish I had.
Oh, okay.
So, Kevin,
Is it possible to just, can we just have, because I was trying to text and chat over and I can't hear it, my earbuds in and everything, I just can't seem to hear everyone.
Can we just get your recommendation about the voting here because Michelle can barely hear us. So,
Michelle, just abstain from the vote, please, so we can move on.
Abstain, fine, I'll abstain.
Thank you.
What is your best practice moving forward?
So, the things are evolving with this. We've had this conversation a couple of times because given the post-pandemic world, there is still an opportunity for people on the board to participate by electronic means. It does require certain kinds of postings, however. So if there is a vote, I'm not sure we met the technical requirements for the posting, but there is a provision for someone to be able to do that ahead of time. Your original policies pre-pandemic did not allow for electronic voting. So things have evolved a little bit since then, but I'm not sure whether we met the notice requirements for that provision.
Kate Canetta,
Yes.
Gladys Cooper,
Yes.
Lauren Daly,
yes.
Bridget Gertin, yes. Julie Miliano,
Yes.
Ralph Pietrafesa,
Yes.
Albert Russo,
Yes.
Louisa Zagodas Gordon.
Yes.
Ralph, can you do action item B, please?
Absolutely. So I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Education approve a request for an additional appropriation from the City Council of $250,000 in insurance deductible for the repair to the DHS Danbury High School gym and associated projects as recommended by the Sites and Facilities Committee.
I'll second
Moved by Ralph, seconded by Kate. Any discussion?
Is there any, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, is there any update to this motion or it's going directly to the city in the form that it was asked?
Mike, John?
Yes.
Yes, no change.
It's going to the city directly for $250,000?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Any abstentions?
Action item C, Al.
Action item C, May 2022 financial report. Motion that the Board of Education accept the May 2022 financial report in accordance with Exhibit 22-89.
Second.
Moved by Al, seconded by Ralph. Any discussion?
I know we spoke about this earlier, but I really want to make sure that we are on track to include the $2.8 million appropriation that was part of the mayor's budget. So I just was wondering if there's any update on that since we had the May meeting.
John?
Yes, I spoke with the city director of finance this week to follow up, and he said he'd try and get to it very soon. He was aware of it and knew we had to do it, and so I'm expecting it in the next couple of weeks.
Further question? That finance director is on board and will move on it within the next 2 weeks, or he's still in question, sir?
Well, that's my expectation in 2 weeks. He knew about it, he knew it was something he owed us. I told him we had spoken with it at the committee meeting, and we were expecting an answer.
Asked and answered. No definitive answer.
Any other questions? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any noes? Abstentions? Ayes have it. Gladys, action item D, please.
Action item D, superintendent contract. I make a motion that the Board of Education accept the superintendent's contract and salary for 2022/23 as recommended.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays?
Aye.
Opposed? Awesome. So moved. Action item F. E. Sorry.
cabinet members' contracts. Motion that the Board of Education accept the cabinet members' contracts as recommended.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay. So moved. And then, Julie, could you do that for me, please?
Consent salaries 2022 plus 2023, motion to accept the Board of Education.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, thank you.
Exam salaries 2022, 2023. Motion that the Board of Education accept the exempt employee salaries, including cabinet for 2022, 2023 as recommended.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Okay. Our budget strategy presentation.
Thank you so much, and I would like to ask the board's permission, if it's okay with the board chair and the board, if we can move item Roman numeral 12, discussion legislative session recap. Brian Bingham and Zach, sorry, I forgot your last name, to share an update. Again, that's Roman numeral 12 discussion. And ask if we can move that up before the presentation, because I'm anticipating we might have a nice lengthy discussion for the presentation.
Do you make a
I don't
motion?
do that.
Madam Chair, or Vice Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we move ahead, bounce to item number 12, discussion 2022 legislative session recap.
Motion to change the order. So I'll just make a motion to change the order.
Alice did.
Oh, we did? Oh.
Yes, Gladys seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 So moved.
All right.
Thank you so much. Brian, you have that thing working? All right, thank you so much.
I'm gonna turn to Michelle so we can see what's going on. Is there gonna be a presentation on the board?
Yes, after this.
Oh, okay.
So it's them and then this.
All right.
And we understand you've got a pretty lengthy agenda, so
You're welcome to stay around.
I appreciate that. Maybe I'll log in on the way home. I appreciate it. So my name is Ryan Bingham. Many of you have seen me. We did a Zoom during the beginning of session. So this is me in person, not in a box. You met Zach Dendis, who joined our firm in November, who's been my partner in crime on all things Danbury. This session, first and foremost, we thank you for your confidence in us, to utilize us. We've had a great opportunity to work with John and Michael and your team, and Kevin, to try to advocate on your behalf, share information as we see it, and try to be an effective communicator, not just with your legislative delegation, but the broader legislators as a whole, in the specific committees that are, trying to pursue action on things that it could affect as broad as the budget, as we'll go over, but smaller, more minute educational policy. So, just briefly, this was a short session. You wouldn't know it because it feels like a marathon when you're inside the building, but it started in February. It ended May 4th at midnight. It is technically not a budget session. We'll get to sort of why that became problematic this year, but there is a budget that gets passed as an interim budget, and there was a lot of activity on that this year. One of our major priorities was and has been to escalate the transition for ECS funding to the city of Danbury. The target's out there. We've pushed hard, and I think through your advocacy, through the advocacy of your legislative delegation, and a lot of the districts in your sort of cohort, it got a lot of traction this year, to the point where, we really thought that it had a really great chance of passing. And ultimately what ended up being the sort of dagger to its passage was because it was sort of this interim budget period, that none of the, we'll say, out-year proposals, not dealing with this year, next year's budget, but out-year proposals, all of them, including the escalation of ECS, were shelved for consideration this year and reconsideration for next year. And I think that I'm sort of getting ahead of myself, but in preparation for that long budget session in January of 2023, I think we should all be sort of keeping our eye on the prize there. Their momentum has been great. We had a lot of people talking about it. Kevin came up to the Capitol with Mayor Esposito during probably the highest attended press conference of the year at the Capitol, and there are many. So I think we put the pressure, continue the pressure there, because it's such an incredible amount of money for the district. So I'll let Zach fill in the blanks on the budget side, and then I'll hit some other highlights and we'll move on.
Yeah, thank you again for having us. My mom cut her teeth in the Board of Ed in a different town many years ago, and you guys are the unsung heroes. So thank you guys for everything you're doing and for having us. I think, as Ryan alluded to, having the superintendent and having the mayor up at the Capitol was huge. I think this is not only an issue on the ECS side that really a lot of groups wanted to see, but a lot of delegation members from a lot of the major cities really pushed for. They were very disappointed to see that it wasn't included in the budget, as Ryan mentioned earlier, but it is something that is hopefully going to be a topic of conversation. The governor, during the short session, really pushed for a certain set of things to be included in the budget, and a lot of things, as Ryan mentioned, were not there. But that isn't to be said that next time around they're going to address, especially the ECS escalation. But also a lot of work around HVAC and air purification inside of schools, technology around that as well. We worked immensely closely with your delegation, but also with a lot of the teachers' unions, folks like that, as well as the Hartford delegation and other cities as well, to try and push the needle forward a little bit on this. And like I mentioned, I think there was a sense at the Capitol that with the short session, no excuse, but with the short session and trying to push a budget through, that there were some priorities that were going to be taken care of next year. So that is kind of where that stands with the ECS funding. A lot of the things that were passed in the budget this year, as you guys have probably read on the News Times and all the wonderful papers that you have, are related to tax cuts. As in an election year, you're going to see a lot of the mill rates being addressed, car taxes, things like that. That's really what had to be paid for in the budget. And the use of ARPA funds for those types of things kind of is not necessarily allowed, so they had to make the cuts where they felt was necessary, and unfortunately when it comes to new spending, that gets impacted as well. So in the packet that we, I believe, passed out and left here, you'll see essentially our bill tracking report for the session, which talks a lot about not only the car tax rates, but also, and I'll leave our cards here if you guys have any questions about this, call us. We could go for a long time here, but we won't. It goes through a lot of what happened with the budget, the recommendations, but also what's going to be happening with the implementer budget. It talks about property revaluations. It talks about, like I said, the car tax, and at the end, something that John and I worked on a lot with Ryan as well, of this document, you'll see the town-by-town runs for the finance pieces of it all. So if you have any questions or any concerns around those things, we'll leave our cards, give us a shout. It's a lot of numbers. I picked just the Danbury obvious numbers here, but if you want to go through other kind of what other folks got in terms of comparison, please give us a call and we can talk a little bit more about it. And I think we're very happy to take a few questions if time allows for that.
Mike, did you have something you wanted to
Just a couple other quick ones.
I just wanted to say quickly that they brought the packets when they walked in, so I handed them to Olga. They'll be ready for you guys as you need them.
And then we do have another document that we share to the team here on Fridays during session, which is the tracking reports, another 13 pages. They're clickable links, so you can see sort of where bills went, what happened to them if they passed, if they ever signed them, that sort of thing. So again, we've got as much information as you want ready at the hand if you need it. But just quickly, on the positive note, obviously, one, congratulations on the Career Academy referendum passage. Your delegation did a phenomenal job carrying forward changes in language, carrying forward the 80% reimbursement for this wonderful Career Academy that you have forthcoming. And specifically, and I don't like, sort of playing the politics, but there's somebody that you really need to thank when you see him for his service, who's not running and will be a loss. David Arconti was really instrumental in a lot of the school construction funding over the years, not just this Career Academy, but high school innovations and you name it. And he's been really useful for us because he's 100% for Danbury, for public schools in Danbury, and we're going to miss him for sure. Whatever happens in November in terms of the election, we're confident that that person or those people who take the mantle will do a fine job. But you'd be remiss not to thank him for always being there and willing to pick up the phone on behalf of Danbury Public Schools. So, with that said, just two quick other items. One, as we mentioned, next session is critically important to your biennium budget, pushing forward for the ECS escalation. As the ability for more people to be in the building becomes more, where more people come into the building more often. What we didn't do this year because of restrictions on the public's access was we didn't do Danbury Day. And you may think, maybe it's not, relevant or meaningful. It is. And I know that since, we've started working with the Danbury Board of Ed to bring up some of the great things that you're doing here in the public school system, to have the local chamber come up and talk about all the things that Danbury is doing is so impactful to people, because sometimes they get in such a narrow lane focus. To be able to meet you, to see the Hatter mascot, and eat some local fare is, it's pretty impactful for an opportunity for all of you to lobby for yourselves. So I commit to you that we want to do Danbury Day. We're looking for, maybe one or two board members to help us organize that. It's a future you problem. I know there's some very current you problems, but we think it's a pretty useful activity, and we want to make it a big splash as a return. And then the second thing that we're going to do in the off session is work on with your administration the opportunity for federal dollars. So, obviously you've heard about this federal infrastructure fund, but there's also investments in clean air and HVAC from the state. There's money from the federal government on that. So as we get into the summer months, we'll be working with Michael, Kevin, and John on accessing those. In fact, I called your former mayor, Mark Boughton, who's now the commissioner at GRS and the czar of the infrastructure fund, on the way over here, and I said, I'm going to drop your name because we're going to be working on getting some money into the district from the federal dollars. He said, absolutely, 100% committed. So those are the sort of things that we're doing as next steps, because we certainly think that there's opportunities to help, at least deal with some of the budget constraints that you have. So that's sort of our pitch and update. We're obviously very easy to reach on a dime, so we'll sort of leave you with an opportunity to follow up on anything that we've provided. If you have anything now or in the future, please don't hesitate.
Brian, the last time we talked, exact last time we talked, there was some movement on the governor's initiative around providing support for districts under the SEL work, and I'm just wondering, what does that mean for districts? More specifically, what might that mean for Danbury?
You have to follow up with me on that.
Okay, no problem.
Are we too early to start? Well, I would like to know from you, because I don't know everything that goes on in Hartford. Is it too early to start being attentive to certain bills that will be given additional funds to Danbury? Or we're not at that point yet?
We're not at that point yet, because anything that didn't pass as of May 4th at midnight 2022 is dead. And so in January, when session starts in 2023, all the new bills start getting filed. But there's a time between probably November election and January where we really want to get together with we'll know at least one new delegation member, talk about the priorities, and see if they'll introduce bills that might be specific to Danbury. So I think we'll end up having to work on our legislative priorities earlier so that we sort of can retrain and train new delegation members to make sure everybody's sort of up to speed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Madam Chair. Question. It's my understanding there's a bill on its way to the Senate which will give $16 billion for school securities. Is there any way to influence that at all?
Zach's our federal guy. He worked in Congress for 10 years for one of our senators. So
Thank you for your service, sir.
I'll let him take that one.
So yes, basically all that money, I worked for Senator Murphy for about 10 years, 5 of which were in DC, and a lot of that money has to be appropriated. So that bill still has to pass, and we're knocking on wood because, as you know, I'm biased, I guess. He introduced it, so former boss. But yes, there will be money that you can leverage, especially for larger school districts. It's key to kind of know that money is going to go to the state. So, having delegation members briefed on how that works is going to be important, and we can certainly handle that piece of it. So, short answer, yes. Long answer, hopefully by Friday we'll know more.
Well, I suppose the answer I was looking for, sir, is your influence, to influence that body of government to pass that. Do you?
Yeah, I think you have the support of your congressional delegation at this point, as far as I know.
Yeah, every House member has mentioned in the state of Connecticut that they would be supporting that bill. Senator Murphy introduced it, and Senator Blumenthal is a co-sponsor of it. So not only would it provide a lot of other things related to school security, but a significant bump up in mental health support and kind of general school funding.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you both so much for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All right, Zach, thank you.
Our budget strategy presentation.
So I just want to share with the board, one, in your packet you have a copy of the presentation we posted this Friday. The great thing about posting presentations prior to the meeting is that you get a lot of feedback, and with that feedback, it's required a couple of updates to the slides. So that's what's coming around now. They're minor revisions, but revisions nonetheless, so we want to make sure to do that. Typically, I move when we do presentations, but I think I'm going to sit here unless I'm in the way of anyone. Yes. Well, I don't know. Well, Sterling will let us know. Sterling, do we need to dim this light?
Either way is fine.
So that's fine.
If it's easier to turn it off, that's fine.
Shut the light down. Can't see it.
Like the blue light, the music in the back.
Afraid I'll fall asleep.
And we'll get started. So, good evening, everyone. Happy to see we also have some folks from the community in the audience. One, I feel like it was very important before the year closed out that we planted the seed for our budgetary needs for the 22-23 school year. And when we made our presentation, budget presentations, I was saying last year, but this past school year, particularly over the last couple of months, as part of our $152 million ask, I was continued to be asked, well, what happens if? What happens if you don't get your full ask? What does that mean for programming? What does that mean for positions? And frankly, I was reluctant to share publicly what that meant, number one, because we, as a team, we had not gone through the exercise of walking through what that might mean. Two, I did not want to create an alarm for my staff when we have a mad exodus out of this school district as a result of. Some realities we've been faced with, however, is our original plan of spreading our ESSA 2 and ESSA 3 grants over a 3-year period. The $11 million gap, meaning the $152 million ask, and the $141 million that's been authorized, we had to find ways to close that gap, and that's $11 million. And so the strategy we are looking to implement is one that will accelerate the spend down of the ESSA grant. And instead of that being spread out over, ESSA 3 being spread out over 3 years, that now means we will spread it out over 2. In summary, that means the cliff is in front of us this time next year. 22-23 will be the last year of the expiration of all 3 at that time of our relief monies, period. Part of the reasons why we feel like it's critically important that we escalated in this fashion is one, as we tried to provide relief for kids this school year, we were faced with some unforeseen challenges, staffing challenges due to shortages, staffing challenges due to COVID, and just staffing challenges, period. Meaning, the additional positions that we invested in with the relief monies, student support specialists, i.e. interventionists, those folks were used to cover classrooms, as were our coaches who typically support new teachers district-wide, were instead deployed to cover classes because we just did not have a choice. The little girl who's on the front page of this presentation in many ways is representative of Danbury Public School System. So this little girl, we'll call her a 4th grader at one of our biggest schools in the district of Danbury. And we're going to say she's in the 4th grade because she looks like she is. And as a 4th grade student, our class size is typically within class guidelines, 24 in the classroom in 3rd grade. Sorry, in 4th grade. And in a typical classroom in Danbury, particularly our bigger elementary schools, there are 24 students in the classroom, approximately 4 students with an IEP, 10 students that require some type of tiered grade intervention support because they're not reading at grade level. We may have 5 students who require English language support, and frankly, not every classroom in this new school has a new teacher, but it's very likely that there's a teacher with first year, second year, or third year new teacher in this building. All of those teachers require new teacher support, particularly given the fact that those new teachers have not been in school our second and third year teachers have not been in a school billed in full-time until this year. And so we have a workforce that does not have the typical training of our workforce in the past, which means our coaches have a very different work ahead of them this year in particular. This is kind of what we call this little girl Ariella, by the way, because we like that. And just want to talk about this idea a little bit more, because right now, Ariella's classroom day, she will go to specialist classes, what we call in district. And so she goes to a rotation of art, music, and PE, which we used to call gym. And so that's certainly part of that rotation. Also, Ariella gets an opportunity, and her classmates, to go to library media classroom as well. So that's part of her experience. But what she will also notice in her classroom as a fourth grader is that maybe 10 students who leave the classroom for English language support, because those students are learning a new language. And so there has to be a certified staff member waiting there. We have 4 students, and again, this is a typical classroom in Danbury Public Schools. We're going to be at least 4 students with an IEP that requires some type of service. Some students may have a service pushed in. Some students may have to push out, be pulled out, and some students may get services pulled out at some point in the day. And then we may have 8 to 10 students, but in this case, 10 students who are not reading at grade level. And so we have a Tier 3 interventionist teacher who's waiting to pull the students out at a certain time of the school schedule to provide Tier 3 support. And when I say Tier 3, it's someone intentionally sitting down with students, helping them learn how to read so that they don't become a special ed student, which requires a greater investment in becoming a special ed student. Critical strategies for the district. Ariel, right now, is a 4th grader, certainly, in what we are seeing as critical staffing that's needed in all of our buildings, with no flexibility on support for our English language students, or our special ed students, or our Tier 3 students, all required services that we have to provide for kids. Certainly our classrooms, when the students go to specials, we have to provide those because our staff, our teachers, by contract, are to get prep time at lunchtime. And when our kids go to specials, our contracted staff, this is when they get prep time at lunchtime. I'm just talking elementary right now. However, when Ariella goes to middle school, the services look similar, although the classes, there's certainly a more robust course offering. And then when she goes to high school, she will be faced with a schedule at the Danbury Career Academy that is robust in its offerings, which we're all very excited about. If you've been in Danbury for just a little while, you know that we pride ourselves in the fact that we can offer a comprehensive list of offerings for kids, from AP in every content and discipline area you can think of. The same is true of honors courses, and the same is true of our regular ed courses, our college prep courses. We don't want to compromise that experience for Ariel. The required services I just talked about, the other ones are optional. And as we go through this presentation, I cannot impress upon the board and our community enough that just the basic services that we have provided and enjoyed in this district are at a point right now where we could be compromising just the basic services we have to provide in this school community for a long time. I'm ready for this. And so this school year, meaning 2021, we had an opportunity to reopen our school buildings. And we're very excited about that, and quite frankly, very proud of what we've done this year. I had an opportunity to meet with our administrators today, send a letter to all of our district staff this past week, thanking everyone, thanking our families, thanking our staff, thanking our administrators. We've needed everyone's help to open up this school district safely and successfully this year. We feel very good about what we've done, very good. However, what we've learned this year is that the supports needed for kids are greater than they have ever been. The supports needed for kids are greater than they ever have been. And I think this board has heard enough from our families and our staff. I think we've heard quite a bit what that reality has looked like in our schools. In the attached, I had included a letter to the board and also included a letter to the greater community. I do not have it shared in this presentation. However, the presentation pretty much encompasses what was in the letter. Already mentioned. And so this slide that's called Funding Sources, City plus State plus Federal plus ESSER, it was important for me, important for us, to find a way to share with the board and share with the community, provide a little bit better understanding of where we are as a district in terms of our financial state. And what I did not do this year, which will change next year, starting tonight, and that is being as transparent as possible of our budget and our financial situation. As part of our budget process, we have talked a lot about our operation budget. And I think gave significant detail, because that's where our focus was, trying to advocate for more monies in our operation budget. However, it was important for us in this presentation to talk about the other funding streams, because we believe there's a perception, and we want to acknowledge it, that there's a perception that we have extra money. And so this presentation is designed to speak to the idea of having extra money and where these additional funding streams, quite frankly, how we've leaned on these additional funding streams for years. And I don't think the community really understood how we've been doing this for years. This is not new for me as your superintendent, your new superintendent. This is something we've been doing for years, and we're just at a critical stage right now where there is no more room.
Can I ask a question on that? So, on those funding sources, I agree with you 100%. It is good to show where it comes from. When you guys put, I was back on past the budget. I mean, when you get to those basic services, I mean, based on past history, do you really think the city was going to give us $11 million? Is that what? Like, I mean, they've never in the history of selected in 2013, and the school was not a lot longer. I mean, so, to your point, what, like, so a community, I mean, how do we inform people? I mean, we have budget meetings and workshops, and we get 75 people, and most of them are politicians, you know, chicken babies and just cans. I mean, it's just, I mean, we have to just let people know, like, look, this, Mrs. Johnson, who is your co-taught in your co-taught kids class, who has an IEP, she's not going to be there anymore. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I understand why we don't do all that stuff, but it's just.
I think that's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
So I mean, I agree with you, Ralph, but I also think our obligation is in making a decision about whether the money's allotted to us. It's, you know, our due diligence is putting together a budget that supports our schools and making sure that we put that forward to the city.
Right.
You know, what they do, that is up to them. And I understand they have their own concerns that they're working with. You know, I think what Ms. Wilson's trying to do here is to break it down in that transparent way that we maybe haven't been doing.
So you can get into it. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine.
I just jumped out of the head now.
No, it's okay, I understand. And so, and I want to, and I'll circle back on your question about, did I think about the 11 million? Because we will need more next year. And as a community, we will have to make some decisions on what's important to us. And I think it will be perfectly clear to the school community if we don't make the right decisions. And I think it will be even more clear when we 20 you want? Operation budget. Okay. So I opened on this one earlier, and we had proposed initially a $152 million budget. And to your question, Ralph, we were authorized $141 million, which leaves us with an $11 million gap. And let me be clear, the fact that we got $4 million this year is, in my eyes, progress given my short time in this district. But we need more. $4 million covers salaries and benefits with just the staff that we here have, with step movement for all of our staff. That's what the $4 million covers. That is not acknowledging one additional kid in the school district. Oh, by the way, we've had a couple of hundred just in 1 year, not to mention in 2 years prior, in which we got less than $4 million. And so that's what's happening. And so we've used Alliance, we've used Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV to cover those differences. There is no more. And by the way, while every other district in the state of Connecticut has gotten some type of relief money, their enrollment has been flatlined. Even the cities have had flatline movement. Norwalk and Stamford has experienced also some enrollment growth, but even the big districts have not gotten the growth that we've received. Our monies are going away. Their monies will go away, but they're not experiencing the same enrollment growth we are. And without an investment to address that growth, we're going to have some problems. And so, next one, Ken. And so what we try to do, and there'll be a continued, the cadence will be similar in that we will talk about Alliance, we will talk about all of the grants, and then try to do a visual breakdown of each one. The $141 million, this is essentially our budget book revised. The $152 million initially saw in your budget book. This now reflects the $141 million, and this is what the breakdown looks like. And I'm sorry, the asterisk is at $82 million, because in our presentation we had moved purchase services, and I believe, John, you said that was for paraprofessionals?
For tutors.
For tutors, I'm sorry. And so we had $4 million in the purchase services line. Appropriately, we moved that up to salaries because during the 2021 school year prior to Ed and John's arrival, those monies were in that line. So for the new school year, we're moving it to salaries. So that's why the asterisk is in. But the bottom line, 141 million, still stays the same. So just wanted to acknowledge that change. Cost savings. So this is an update in your presentation, in your slide. And previously, we did not have one of the cost-saving strategies that we implemented this year. The first one I want to talk about is we used ESSER funds to address social distancing district-wide. We hired 11 K-5 elementary teachers, classroom teachers, to help spread out class size in our classrooms. Through attrition, meaning resignations, retirements, we were able to fold in 9 of those 11 positions. And so, which means 9 people on this side retired or resigned. We had 9 people in these extra positions for social distancing. They came in, they replaced the 9 people leaving. Not only was it cost neutral, it was actually at a savings because the folks on this side of the room were a little bit cheaper than the folks in the room. This cost difference saved us $554,000, and we were able to make this move without impacting class size in our K-5 classrooms. We did, however, because of enrollment growth, have to keep 2 of those positions. So we weren't able to get rid of all 11, but we were able to, through attrition, move 9 of the 11. The other 2 cost-saving strategies I'd like to talk about, and that is, these are projecting. We have more than 40 certified staff members who have announced their intention to retire or resign. And we are projecting a savings of close to $1 million And this is through what we call breakage, meaning our staff who's leaving at the top of the salary scale. Through a strategy, we will look to replace those folks with less experienced staff members, which means they will come in at lower on the pay scale. Last but not least, but this is a savings we've yet to realize. Our hiring has to reflect this strategy. So we have to scrutinize every single hire. There's some hires that are hard to fill that, quite frankly, we're not going to have a choice. But the other positions, we will have to maintain and stick to the plan to hire people at the bottom of the scale. Last but not least, we are examining the economics of a retirement incentive plan for teachers. Typically, districts do not see a cost savings in year one. And so for the first year, probably we're not going to see a savings because any incentive monies would have to be poured into the first year budget. Subsequent years, however, typically districts do see a savings. And so at the very least, we feel like we need to do our due diligence to see if there's a savings opportunity for us as a district. With that, however, comes we need to make sure there's a workforce behind. If we create an incentive to incentivize staff to leave, we need to make sure we can find teachers. So at the same time, this analysis needs to include to make sure there's enough folks ready to become teachers to replace them. Right ahead. The next one is Alliance budget, and I think this will allow us to go a little bit faster. So our operation budget includes over 1,300 staff members. Our Alliance budget, we have close to 200 staff members in Alliance, 191 specifically. Of the $19 million that's projected for next year, $16 million is in salaries and benefits, which leaves us $3 million for supplies, $3 million for initiatives. It's not a lot of money. And the $1.3 million that we talked about as a budget driver, as an example, this is a place that the science of reading, bringing in a new reading program that's required by districts. This is a place where we had looked to and hoped to put those monies. And so we're excited about the fact that we're looking to experience a $2 million increase from Alliance next year. $1 million certainly will just go to salaries and benefits, just because of step movement and moving up. And then, of course, it's that $1 million for this initiative that we're hoping is going to cover our science and reading initiative. And then, of course, on the next page, again, you'll see a breakdown in the table, kind of representative of the narrative. Great. The next one is title grant. And this is not one we've talked a lot about publicly in the past. I do think it's important. One, we have what we call Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV. These grants, most salaries and allocations are grant specific, and they also, just so you know, include public, non-public schools as required by statute. And so when Kelly, Kara, and I are planning at the beginning of the year our budget and how money is going to be deployed, we're required to also meet with our non-public school peers and meet with them. Typically we meet right here in this room. We give them an overview of how these monies by law are supposed to be spent, and then kind of as their parent district, we work with them to provide services. And then that happens for every single one of the grants, because all of their students also require services, and those services and that support comes from us, and we use, for example, Title I to help in that regard. We also have, so you know, and again, this is anticipating a bump from, I believe, 3.7 to 4.4 next year in overall grants. Of the $4.4 million of all of the grants collectively, 3.3 is dedicated to salaries for 37 staff members. These positions mostly are support positions for schools. Again, this is not a new strategy. These positions have been in there for years. We've added one or two more, a couple of more this year because there was no room in operation budget, which leaves a very little bit for supplies, but you can see in this grant specifically, it's mostly staff funded. And then on the next slide, Ken, we're ready. This gives a breakdown, and again, gives kind of a visual presentation of it. And I am happy to go back if there are any specific questions about any of these slides. Last but not least, and that's other grants. And certainly, as a district, we've talked about Title I before. I think this slide provides even a little bit deeper look into the funding stream that the district receives. And that's our IDA grant, which is specific for our special needs students. Priority schools, which is connected to Alliance. Just for some more specifics, priority schools, a little over $1 million, has funded since I've been here, Reach and Endeavor and the ACE staff, almost in its entirety, I think, with the exception of the 2 principals. So the entire staff is in this budget. Typically in districts, frankly, these are operational items. For us, they have been in grants for years. Magnet School, so this is our, this is AIS, elementary school. This grant helps us provide funding for, it's pretty much a third of their staff. And in districts that are able to, the magnet monies allow them to do something over and above what your typical comprehensive elementary schools would receive. For us, it just helps us to cover the cost. And in our case, it helps us cover the cost of staffing. So that's how we deploy these magnet school monies. And then school readiness also kind of rounds out the other grants. These grants title up to $17.3 million, in which 5.8 is dedicated to salaries for 70 staff members. We don't have as much in here for staff. That's because the grants are specific, and these grants would total them all up a little bit more specific in terms of what we can spend on and how we can spend it. So you'll see the additional 7.2 is allocated to necessary equipment improvement, supplies, and other program and salaries and allocations are grant specific. We're ready for the next page now. To just round out kind of the cadence that's going on, this is the last page of those grants and slides, you'll see the breakdown here. So I'd like to go to the summary slide, slide 13. Funding summary, city plus state plus federal plus ESSA. So first, if you go to the next slide, the first slide is staffing summary. And these are all of our staff members and how we pay for them district-wide. And this is certified and non-certified staff. And so you'll see the vast majority of our staff is in operation budget, close to 200 in Alliance, 37 in Title, 70 staff members in other grants, and 155 staff members in the 2 ESSA grants. So I think it's very important that we emphasize when we received our first grant in the 2019-2020 school year. We received the CARES grant in the second half of the year from March until, and that was $600,000-$700,000, I don't remember the exact number. And then we were in receipt of 2 additional relief monies, ARPA funds, we call here in district ESSA 2 and ESSA 3. And the positions that we hired with those monies serve multiple purposes. One, the positions help to address social emotional needs in this district. Psychologists, social workers, counselors, deans of students. We hire these positions under that umbrella of addressing mental health and social emotional needs of students, anticipating there was going to be a significant need given the pandemic and time kids were out. And in the back, we presented out there on this many nights to our community. We also hired 30+ staff members specifically to address social distancing. And so we needed 15 high school staff members. Dan was close to 30, 28, 29, 30 students in a classroom. If we have an 8-period day plus 15 extra teachers, it allowed him to get down to a more manageable 26. At that 26, we felt a little bit more comfortable and safer that we can socially distance. This was a priority when we reopened our schools in the fall. Going back how I opened, in other school districts, the additional staff is socially distancing. Non-issue, they hire extra staff is social distancing, the money goes away, you go back to normal because enrollment has not increased. Dan needs every single one of those positions right now. Plus, by the way, in our budget, he needs more. Because the enrollment that we've experienced this year has been heavy middle school and high school. So we've been able to, through attrition, let go of 9 teachers at the elementary school, those 9 of the 11 positions, because we've experienced the majority of our enrollment growth, 6-12 this year. We have not been relaxed at the middle school and high school levels. And so the investments we've made with the relief monies are now monies that we just need for enrollment growth. But we didn't get the additional monies for that enrollment growth. And so we have to park it in places where the funding streams are. And so you are seeing in that 155 a number of staff members, and these are not all certified staff members, it's certified and non-certified staff members, that we're going to need a significant investment in 23-24 to make sure we've addressed. We're ready for the next one. And so this is just a funding summary for the remaining American Relief Funds. The CARES Act, which is the initial one that was shared with districts in the spring of 2020, that expires this June. Next school year, and initially scheduled to expire in June 30th, 2023, is ESSER 2, $6,404,000. ESSER 3, originally we had planned to deploy that, disperse that over 2 more years, and given the gap, we are looking to move all of those monies to next year, to 22-23 school. We're ready for this, and I'm almost done. Enrollment growth plus funding. And this next slide, this is a little different from what I had shared with you previously. And current enrollment is 12,103. This year, and in this slide, we tried to put together a slide that had enrollment versus funding streams. And what you're seeing in 2022, which is the year we're in now, is our budget of close to $175 million this year. Next year, because we are folding in all of ESSER 3, that's going to be a little closer to $190 million to cover the positions that we just previously talked about. Next year is the year of uncertainty. This is assuming a $4 million investment again by the city of Danbury, and everything else not flatlined, but increasing gradually by Title I of the lines. But the gap is significant. And this is the gap, and this is where it brings us this evening, and where we're trying to plant the seed for the coming school year. We understand, and again, going back to perception, we understand clearly, I think, a lot of folks in the community, and this is typical in school districts, any position that is not directly in front of student, districts typically begin to look at the positions that are not directly in front of kids. If any tough decisions have to be made, as a superintendent, I'm always going to say we have to start everywhere else first before we go to a classroom. However, what is important as we begin to as again, we're just planting seeds right now, and beginning to think about next year. We have talked about, in my short time in this district, talked about Danbury Public Schools doing more with less. Right? I think we're proud of the fact that we've done that. What I don't think is clear, however, is how much more we have done with less. Certainly, we have celebrated the fact that we've had a number of schools of distinction in this district, blue ribbon schools in this district. That's about growth, because our kids, no matter where they come in, our staff and our principals, they take them to the next level. But we do more with less, and so Ken, we're ready for this. And so if you look at public available data, and so that's EdSite for us, we were able to find 2021 data, which is most recent 21-22 data this school year. And so when looking at how many students per administrator district-wide, not in the school, but across the district, we have more students per administrator than our comparables. And again, I have comparables, and I know I had mentioned previously in meetings talking about a district reference group. We've also added an additional district, Middletown, which is not in the DIRT group, but we tried to find comparable districts for the board to see. Meriden, Stanford, Norwalk are directly in our comparable groups. Middletown is outside of that comparable group, but certainly similar population as Danbury Public Schools. The next slide is the number of students per staff rating. And in this one, you will see, although the slide doesn't seem as significant as the administrative one, it still means per classroom, our teachers are doing a lot more with less. But the emphasis I'm trying to place here is cutting just further separates us from our peer groups. Cutting, right, so Ralph, going back to your question about the 11 million, and frankly, which is even more next time we ask again, cutting anything in this budget just continues to separate us from the same comparable districts that we've been compared to by the state of Connecticut. We have done more with less for a long time. And I understand that that's a reality of districts. But the investments need to be different right now because we have maxed out our funding streams. That's where we are right now. Ready for this. This next slide is really just reiterating kind of what we talked about already. And it's really going to require a different kind of investment. And Ralph, tonight, frankly, is like day one of trying to have a different conversation, a different dialogue with our partners. And because this is a city problem right now. I feel like we need folks at the table to help us address this issue that we're about to face. And it's the cliff that we talked about a couple of years ago is upon us sooner than I really like to think. And so, Ken, before you go to the next slide, I just want to share and then open it for the discussion, anticipating maybe a little. When we are, because again, please understand and appreciate the reluctance to talk about what might we lose if. But the first thing, we are required to provide services for students in this district. And so opening up with Ariel's class about, hey, her kids, our peers in her classroom, some are going because some of those students have an IEP services we have to provide, English language support we have to provide, Tier 3 support we have to provide. And then there are supports we just should be providing given our strategies around trying to save us money district-wide. And so having coaches to support new teachers, because as a strategy, we want to bring them in. By the way, we have a cohort of 3 years of new teachers in our district because they have not been physically in front of kids right now. And we're trying to add to that very young core of teachers. We closed the door and we have a principal who's running all over their building of 400 because they don't qualify for an assistant principal. and they're struggling to get in classrooms because they're addressing all the mental health challenges that you've heard so much about. And it's the coaches right now that are providing that support, that are plugging in where, hey, this is the new math curriculum you heard about in the district. This is the new reading program you heard about. Someone being face-to-face and helping answer those questions. Because, by the way, their graduate program wasn't even in person because they were learning remotely when they graduated. These are the people that were put in front of our kids. So collectively as a team, we begin to look at programs and services that are not required and service that we have to have a discussion about if we're looking for savings. And they're not the kind of things I'd like to ever talk about in any district, but we have to, okay? And so the bigger buckets, we have to provide kindergarten. We have to. We're not required to provide full-day kindergarten. As a superintendent, it would be crazy. Our focus should be K1 and 2 so that we can change the trajectory of learning in this district. That's what we should be pouring in more resources, more interventions, more coaches. But we're not required to provide full day. And it could be a significant savings in half-day kindergarten. High school electives, which is probably, I don't want to say the most, but there is a lot of money in a high school schedule. Again, it's because our students, our community, we enjoy a comprehensive selection of electives for our kids. It's what a comprehensive high school should do. However, we could offer a schedule that looks like the middle school schedule. It's fixed in nature. You get 7, 8 classes. The schedule is what it is. That's what we're required to provide. But that's not what a high school experience should look like. And so because it doesn't look like that, we have the teachers to make sure that we have the teachers to make sure that when kids request honors chemistry, we have to provide chemistry. We do not have to provide honors chemistry and AP chemistry, right? We want to provide AP chemistry, but honors we don't. And so we can maximize, if we really want to be efficient, we can maximize classes and maximize AP, maximize our college prep courses, and don't have these classes in the middle. Because right now we just went through an exercise a couple of days ago where we had 60 plus classes that are less than 24 students in the classroom. And so many people would say, well, you shouldn't run those classes. Oh, but wait, it's AP chemistry with 18 kids in the classroom. Who's going to tell a kid, we don't want you to take AP chemistry? We're educators. Of course we're not going to cut that class. But then we have AP physics with 15 kids in the classroom. Well, if we're trying to be efficient with our money, we should not be running AP physics. If you want physics, you just take regular physics, and we max it out at 26 to 28 kids. But why would we want to tell the kid they're not going to take AP physics? We are educators. That's not what we want to do. But if we're looking for a significant savings, this is when you begin to realize a significant savings. Because in the middle school schedule is very tight. They have 1,000 kids. We have the staff exactly associated with that number. Done. But in high school, we give kids more choice. So they have the opportunity to sit with Mr. Miller and his class. But we don't offer that class in middle school. Right? So it's very structured. But just looking at some of the other offerings. And so class size, certainly we have some range. And could we maximize more in our K2, which right now is at 22? Would be pushed up to 24? Yes. 3-5 is, we try to max that out at 24. Would that go to 26? Yes. A high school and the middle schools, unfortunately the middle school's already bursting at 26 to 28. Could that go up? I would not recommend that. The schools, I mean, physically the schools, and Ralph and Rachel had the opportunity to walk through the buildings. Physically, both middle schools are bursting at the seams. They don't even have the capacity to, oh my gosh, that's a whole story. And then the high school, we're at 26 to 28. The majority of Dan's college prep courses are maxed out at 28. And so could we push that up to 30? Yes. But I taught in New York City, my roles were 30 to 32. This is not where we want to be in teaching in our classrooms. So certainly some other initiatives we talked about. I've been in board meetings where we talked about counseling as a priority, trying to provide and improve that ratio. But all of the things that you see in front of you are things that we would have to consider. And certainly, and I have to mention administrators because I know that's oftentimes and clearly the first place we would look because they're the furthest one to kids. But I just have to remind everyone, no different from the teachers, we're already doing more with less with every single category. And we will share the Ed site, the Connecticut Ed site. It's a public available site where they can share all comparable districts. You can look at any district in the state of Connecticut. This is how we look compared to our peers. We have been doing more for less with years. That has not changed despite the investments we've made in the last couple of years. And I know you must be tired. This is the last slide. And so with that, I will conclude the presentation. My assistant superintendents and chiefs are here to help me answer any questions that you might have. And we may or may not need to jump back to a couple of slides given the questions, but I think you're.
I have a question. On the potential education programming, is there a way we can attach dollar amounts to it? Like, so we can see like, you know, hey guys, we were short this, so this might have to go. I remember, I think I was the first year on it, when the full day came out. I was so excited that we went to something at the same time. That's a good one. And I was, first year at when they were trying to get rid of athletics was another one. And parents came out to the meeting, the candidates meeting, like the new board members, and specifically asked each board member if they were for athletics or against it, and somebody. So there's a lot of hot button issues here that I think would draw attention to, just getting people more informed. Because, I think that 2 kids to the district or anything like that, and some parents are saying, it doesn't really affect your kid. If I was on the board,
Right.
if it didn't affect my kid, if he was playing soccer, he was playing soccer, I'd be out screaming in the streets. The average person doesn't know, like, I recall a bunch of them, people would come, and we'd have a room full of, we had 7,000 people at the high school graduation. If we got, 50 people from there who came to a budget meeting or something like that, it's crazy. If we could attach dollar amounts to these, just to kind of see and say, put it in front of people, that might help.
We will work on that. That is important.
First, I just want to say thank you. This is a very clear presentation. I really like how you laid it out because I think one of the things that we struggle with at the board level is sort of understanding what our spending looks like. We talk about our operating budget a lot, but we don't talk about all the different components of what we're actually spending dollars-wise. So I just want to thank you for that, and thank your finance team as well. I had a quick question about the Alliance budget slide. You mentioned that there would be a $1 million allotment for the Science of Reading program. Is that correct?
So I think we presented that at 1.3 in terms of our budget drivers this year. And I don't know if the real number has been solidified yet. Right, it hasn't been solidified yet, but the point being we had to pay for that initiative somewhere. And so we're anticipating, I recall in our presentations, we would use one of our grants to pay for that. And if it is Alliance, given the $2 million anticipated increase, we anticipate we're going to need at least $1 million for salary just movement, and that the other $1 million could be from Alliance to pay for the science movement, which
Okay.
And as I was saying that, Kara was reminding me, kind of shaking her head, that we've actually moved more positions in Alliance the last couple of days. So we're going to have to find extra money to try to correct.
Okay, that's what I just want to clarify, because the slide itself, adds up to the 19 million, but does not include anything about that programming, so. I did do some quick math here, and I just want to make sure I have my numbers right, if this sounds accurate to you. Our total spend is somewhere in the neighborhood of $208.4 million. That includes all of our funding sources. And do I also understand correctly, 26.3 million are expiring one-time funds? So as of next school year, we need to source and figure out how we're going to come up with at least $26.3 million. Is that accurate?
No, we would like to keep every single position that we hired in the district, and every single, all of it, but we understand we can't keep all of them. And so we're anticipating the $11 million gap will still need to be filled. And I think we're projecting a number, and John, I feel like you said probably more like 15 million this time next year or next spring. And that's anticipating no enrollment growth. And 11 million plus salary movement and labor movement of our staff. So and this is going into contract negotiations, but we're anticipating about $4 million in just operating costs, typical contract obligation.
Given that we're spending some of those ESSER dollars on salaries, and those ESSER funds are disappearing, I mean, we're using, the plan right now is for 23.5 million in ESSER funds for this coming school year. So that's what I'm looking at, is that substantial gap in funding that we're just no longer going to have, and what that's going to mean. I mean, even if you're pulling in, let's say, 15 million, you still have a gap of funds that's pretty substantial.
Yes, that is true.
Larger than any of the increases we've had on our operations side in quite some time. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sir, looking over some of my notes for an elementary school in an IEP, 10, did I get that right? Not reading at grade level.
Yes.
5 at English language support, and 8 to 10 under grade level deficiency. Given the worst case scenario, sir, what do we have to, where would we support? Would we not support the gifted and have to be forced to reinforce the lower end of our spectrum that needs additional services? Is my point clear? What do? Do we drop AP so we can accommodate the kids that are struggling, basically in a nutshell?
Okay, I can answer that. So we have services that we are required to provide. And so we have to start with the requirements, or the district will be even more trouble. And we will need even more money. And the classroom ratios will be even smaller, because we will have more students requiring more services. So we have to start with the required services because they are required. And then we look at what's optional in terms of staffing, and in terms of services for kids. And that's going to, the biggest way to save money is positions, unfortunately. And so we would be forced and pushed to look at the people furthest away from kids first. So we understand and recognize that's going to be administrators. And then second, that's going to be the folks who don't have kids in front of them every single period. These are the interventionists and the coaches. And then the next layer would be our teachers, right? And I'm telling you right now, there are not enough administrators to cut to find a significant savings. There are not a lot of coaches to cut to find a significant savings or interventionists. The real savings is going to be teachers, and it's going to be programs. And so now if we're going to find savings there, again, it's going to be required versus optional. And what the potential impact slide that you saw, or some of the optional programming that's available. So to go back to your question, yes, right? So honors in AP is optional. What's required is to provide 3 years of science, which is similar to what we provide in the middle school schedule. Right? Very structured, very 7 periods a day, limited choice, and then that's what we have to provide. Our kids, and I think we're very proud of the fact that we have a comprehensive offering of electives for our kids. Those electives will not be there without a significant investment. They will not be there.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our presentation. Oh. So, superintendent report, and I just wanted to share with the board and the community this summer will require some significant planning by the team and I. And with that, I'm going to ask my team to provide some updates for planning for 22-23. These are some things that will be happening over the next couple of months. And so the first item, the next 2 items, I'll just say, Mike, if you don't mind, I'll move this around, and that is finalizing the strategic plan, and then also enrollment monitoring.
Do you need the microphone? Oh, yeah.
Wish I had a little presentation, Al, that's what
It wasn't the length, it was the subject matter.
they go hand in hand.
Goes right to the heart.
All right, I've got 2 items on the superintendent's report here, enrollment monitoring and finalizing the strategic plan. I'm going to start with enrollment monitoring just because it follows so nicely from the presentation the superintendent just gave. So we ended last year's school district with just over 12,100 students. At our peak, we were just below 12,300. Our internal projection for next year is about 12,350. The 2 big areas that we're going to see movement are really kindergarten and first grade, and I'll say a little bit more about these as we go through them. So far, as of today, we have 787 kindergartners registered. Last year, we had about 959, and this year we're projecting to be pretty close to that number once we hit our October 1st number. The one that surprised me a little bit was today we hit our 1,000th first grader. Our projected high was only going to be 941. We already went over the 1,000 mark today.
It's not July 1st.
No. And last year, our end of year was only 923. So our suspicion on this one is that there were a lot of parents that held their kids back out of kindergarten, and now we're seeing them all show up in a rush in first grade. So that's going to be a big class. And you know, to sort of genuflect on Kevin's comments, these are kids that didn't have kindergarten, so they may not know their alphabet. They may not be able to count to 10. So these could be, additional supports that are needed in those schools. So that's a number we're definitely going to keep an eye on. And also at the high school, at the end of the year last year, we had about 3,553. We're anticipating about 200 more than that this year, so we should be there about 3,750. So we'll have more updates on that as people enroll and register over the summer. The other item I have is just a little update on the strategic plan. So we've been moving forward with the big 6 goals is what we're referring to, the strategic plan that the board here has seen multiple times and worked on in their own sessions. We have been doing our action planning process, and that is something that will be ready for the board to review in the fall. And we'll also be meeting with our principals, our elementary and secondary principals, so that they can work in that action plan into their school improvement plans and their continuous improvement cycle. So that will be happening in some of those August days we have just before the start of school.
Mike, I'm sorry to get you to this. I know it's not up here, but can you speak to what's next with security, with you and our director of security for the summer.
Yeah, we had a great sites and facilities meeting with Louisa last week. We just gave a sort of high-level overview of some of the things we were doing. As you know, the audits are still an ongoing process. We're about 12 or 13 now, I'm not sure. They've been chipping away at those. We'll be looking really closely at the audit results when they come through. We're going to be rehiring, filling vacancies in our safety advocates. We have additional cameras and alarm systems going into the schools. And we've been looking at our facilities budget to see if we can add in a few more vestibules in a few of the schools where they still don't have them. So that's going to be our big summer lift, is doing some overhaul and security work, and I'm looking forward to have a lot to report out when we come back in the fall.
So I just wanted to interject quickly. Teresa had reached out to me recently about security. And I know we've had several discussions about security as a board as well. We will, throughout the summer, at least every 2 weeks, provide some updates to the board regarding all of this planning, specifically around security, that we talked about that. So we'll make sure that we continue to provide some updates throughout the summer. And if we see anything that's concerning regarding these audits, we'll certainly make sure that's highlighted kind of our updates throughout the summer. Anyway. So the next one, unfortunately, graduate next steps. Sorry, Carol, we didn't go first.
Okay, so wrapping up the year with a portrait of the graduate, we saw a tremendous amount of work put into the continuum. We did share that draft out with the curriculum committee and ultimately with the board. And so we're able to create a pilot group of teachers to begin to field test and pilot out some of the items and the characteristics within their lesson plans, and to experiment, run lesson experiments with students in their classes and report back on that work, and then submit lesson plans for review so that we begin to see how teachers would be reading and integrating the attributes into their work, and to give them sort of a very safe space to do that, and an opportunity to receive feedback. And so we had about 30, I call them the POG pioneers, who went out ahead of their peers to begin to do that work, and they're going to continue to work with us next year as we begin to infiltrate these characteristics, embed them into our curriculum, talk about assessments, talk about how we grade students, and how we provide feedback along these lines. So we'll be going a little bit slower than I think we anticipated, because there's a lot of work. One of the benefits of having some of the facilitation with the Future Design School, the group that we met, was really digging deep into foundational underpinnings of pedagogy and teaching and learning around these attributes. And we realized that we need to have a lot more conversations about grading, standards-based grading, providing feedback along the lines that are not necessarily along the A, the B, the C, the D, but really meaningful feedback on the portrait of the graduate. So we're going to be continuing that work next year. The work that we've done was so well received by the Barr Foundation, which is who sponsored us, our work this year. They have offered us to apply for a third round of funding, upwards of $400,000. So Dr. Martins and I completed that application and submitted that today. And we're going to be diving into the grading aspect of this and continue with a small group of teachers in 9th grade who will serve as a pilot group to help us really get smarter and gain some more feedback around this. So we're excited about that. We should hear about an award by the end of the summer. Should I go on to the academy planning?
Please.
Some of it's timing. So the Danbury Career Academy planning, as you know, the ed specs went on the board tonight. That's wonderful. That is all moving forward. There's been a lot of work in the background with a small core team to do work on curriculum and the planning for that. We've got 6 foundational courses, which will be the 10th grade courses that represent the foundation curriculum for each of the academies, have been posted for the summer, and we'll have teachers and some of our leaders working on the development of that. At the same time, Brett Dean, who has been hired as the Director of Academy Partnerships, will be coming on this summer, which is super exciting because we really need him to get out into the community to start to build those relationships and partnerships with the businesses to help sponsor some of the academies and the pathways, but also really to make those super critical connections with internships, externships, and bringing in industry experts to help us with some of the curricular electives that need to get developed to fulfill the academy.
Dr. Kessler, would you mind telling the board and the community where we met Brent, number one, and kind of what he does there, and what we're really hoping is going to happen here, because we feel strongly that we found someone. As we were interviewing candidates in this room, we didn't even, we know how to interview. We've done that enough. But what we did not realize is what this position really, really required, because it's so new for us as a school district. And because we had the benefit of visiting Nashville, the academies of Nashville, and a person from Nashville interviewed for the vacancy, I'll stop there, because we are just tickled that we were able to find someone to lead this work for us and frankly guide us, because we're charting, this is uncharted waters for us as a district. And okay, I hope that's enough. I'll stop.
Yeah, I think you did a good job. No, we are super excited because, as Kevin mentioned, this is someone who brings a wealth of experience from the place in the country that's best known for this academy model. So even within our questioning and the interview process, Brett was filling in gaps with information for things that we're going, oh, yes, okay. So we wrote more notes. We got more from him than he got from us in that interview. And he, we were tickled pink. He had heard about what we were planning here, and there's a lot of talk about it. And so when he learned about the scale with which we were trying to plan this and the uniqueness of the pathways, and he asked us several questions. He wanted to make sure that we were committed. He wanted to make sure that we were going to engage in the training and that to do things in a certain way to guarantee a specific outcome for students. And so he was also looking for the fit and the commitment. So he's just an amazing person. He has a very charming personality. I can't wait to get him in front of the Chamber of Commerce. I can't wait to get him in front of our partners who have already reached out and said, how can we partner with you? And it's been very difficult to kind of establish and keep running after all those relationships in order to kind of run the school system here. So this person will be dedicated to doing that, and I think that position will pay for itself tenfold. As we look to open up the academy and to continue to move forward. So we're super excited about that. But we do have we have been meeting with a small 14 group. We meet every Friday at 7:30 in the morning at Danbury High School. We work on every aspect, and we have quite an agenda and a list and an action plan that we're following. And we are well through it. We are very much on time with our development and planning. And we're hopeful despite some of the things you heard this evening. We have to find a way to make this happen and to be able to staff the academy in the way that it deserves to be staffed and to resource it appropriately, because this is special. And academy or no academy, we still have several thousands of children that are coming up the ladder that we have to find classroom space for and an educational program for. So this is really important. So that's that. And we will, there are, I gotta say one more thing about it. It's hard because, we had this presentation tonight, and we've been talking about the funding for this for a while. I'm gonna get choked up. But, the city has to invest, our partners have to invest. What we're trying to do, advanced placement courses are pretty standard in most high schools. You want to get into UConn, you want to get into area colleges, you have to have certain classes. So we can't let this go, and we have to do everything in our power to make sure that we preserve our funding. The Academy is the next step for us. It's progressive, it's innovative, it's going to be amazing, and we have to find a way to back it and to get the funding. And so I look forward to partnering with everybody in here to help make that happen. Thanks. I'm sorry.
question about grading. You're not going to do any more of the standard grading, is that correct?
No, we're going to look at how we grade and the feedback that we give to students along the lines of grading that's more meaningful and substantive.
Can you give us an example, what's more meaningful?
Sure. So we have talked a lot about standards-based grading. And so if a student has sometimes we give students credit and points for, well, you did all your homework, right? Whether or not it was maybe as accurate as it needs to be, or as high quality as it needs to be. You did your homework, you get X amount of points. You turned in all these particular projects and things, but perhaps the quality of the work within, meeting a particular standard in an area, is not where it needs to be. So sometimes extra points, extra credit, things like that can mask where a student stands in reality to a standard of performance relative to a grade level. And so things like grade inflation happen on a routine basis, and really we do a disservice to children by not giving them an accurate picture of where they stand with their academics. And not only that, but to give feedback and feed forward, I call it feed forward. How do I get better from here? So if this is where I am now, what's the next step to get better in my work? And how do I provide models and examples of how to do that and the support along the way to do that? So rather than just, we dish out a B, this paper's a B, what does that really mean? And where in this paper and where in this work do I need to improve to get better? So that when we send students off to college, we are certifying that they are really ready. Beyond the grade level, we've actually prepared them well for the rigors of college and beyond, and anything else that they would like to pursue.
Is it possible that you can share the plan, how you're going to work that out?
So that's part of the BARD grants to explore that. So this is a mechanism one of the reasons why BARD is funding it is because they too realize that this is a key critical component to actually feeding into student achievement and improved outcomes for students. And so they are going to support us in exploring how best to do that. And so this is really an experimental design with teachers to explore how to best do that.
This is not like giving an athlete a trophy just because they show up, is it?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Giving a student a trophy, they might not play as great, but they get a trophy anyway.
This is the opposite.
It's right. Yes, it's completely the opposite. It is assuring that we're providing feedback in terms of grading along the lines of grading that's meaningful to students, has criteria and outcomes attached to it, and a mechanism to help that student improve, as opposed to, here's your B, thank you very much. So it is the opposite in the sense that it's more supportive of the student, and it's designed to push forward and increase student achievement outcomes, because you're actually trying to improve an area based on a standard relative to where a student is at a grade level to get them to move forward. So it really is to dig deeper into the work of what teachers do with students and how students receive feedback on their progress.
To that end, you anticipate that you're going to be spending most of the next year working to answer this question, what it will look like.
Absolutely.
And so perhaps by the end of next year, we might be able to see, something a little more definitive.
Sure.
The body of work that you've been.
Absolutely.
So.
Yes, so it's really like what is possible, and then what training would teachers need. And so this is very much an experimental design to see how this could inform best practice when it comes to grading students and giving them feedback.
And not only the teachers, but the students and families
One
as well, because that's going to be a huge learning curve
Yes.
for all of those involved as well.
Yes.
'Cause
Yeah.
they're not-
I'm not saying we're changing grading for everybody next year. This is a small group of teachers that's going to dig deep into this topic of grading and getting, how do you provide feedback, on being a good communicator and a collaborator, and where does that fit in with my classwork and coursework? And so it's very much exploratory in nature, and we will develop the process of how we're going to take that information and apply it to, take what we've learned and apply it to our teacher training.
during this experiment, will you be running parallel grading systems as if we were implementing a new financial software system?
Actually, we are. That's exactly what we're doing. We're going to ask teachers to keep 2 grade books.
Okay, thank you.
Kara, can you explain a little bit more the POG? Because we adopted a POG with characteristics of the fortunate graduate. And just kind of looking at the faces of the board, I just realized everyone wasn't here. We adopted the POG #1, but 2, like what plays a role in the rubric itself, which is actually the characteristics that play a role in the rubric. So when I heard you mention the listener, the communicator, et cetera, I don't know if the board is, everyone on the board is aware or familiar with.
The characteristics of themselves or
The characteristics and how that's kind of driving the rubric.
Sure.
Things that we're going to be assessed.
Sure. So as part of the portrait work with the pioneers, it was very clear as they were working, the feedback that was coming in, because we met with them continuously to get feedback on how things were going, and what are you struggling with, and how are the students reacting to talking about what an advocate is, or what a learner is, or what an innovator is in the classroom, and how are you working that into your biology class that's different from your math class, that's different from your art class, and what might that look like? And so as we were working with the teachers, it was very clear that the teachers are like, how do I rate this? And I'm finding that I'm having a lot more discussions with the students on this, because it's really discussion based, right? And that the students really appreciated the level of feedback and discussion that's happening, but it also opened up kind of more discussion around the grading aspects of their work, and how these attributes kind of layer in and overlay that work as well. So it was very clear that we needed to dig into the grading piece and explore it more. And you know, there was quite a few folks that were excited about that work. So the characteristics of the graduate, the portrait, the advocate, communicator, collaborator, innovator, and learner. And I just, I'm glad Kevin pointed out there might have been a few people who might not have seen that or have been part of the curriculum committee. I can certainly share out what that continuum looks like. But the continuum itself is a rubric of sorts delineated by grade level, middle school and then high school, that indicate sort of characteristics of each outcomes, and then characteristics with each of the portrait attributes that sort of describe the nature of those. And then we ask teachers to work some of those into their lessons, and we'll be working very slowly and deliberately next year, over the course of next year, to make sure that we're supporting our teachers through that, and also learning how best to implement and integrate these across. And what I have learned is that not every district is going to this length to integrate. Many times, often you'll see the portrait of the graduate gets relegated to a poster on a website or a flyer. Hey, Rob, we're all learners, and that's really the extent of it.
Because you went to a conference.
Right, we went to a conference, or there was some funding, and that's why we're doing this. But one of the reasons why BAR is sticking with us, and now this is our third round, is because we're taking it very seriously and we're exploring it. And when our group went up to Massachusetts to meet with the other funded groups, we realized that no one had reached a certain point yet. No one had broke this barrier with the grading. No one had gone to the extent of where we were going. And we were a little bit surprised by that. And they kept asking us a lot of questions about, how did you do this? And they were impressed with the continuum. But finally, I don't know, I take up too much time here, but basically we started giving them more information than they had to share with us on this. And so we were kind of further ahead than the group. And so now we're out there experimenting further and taking this a little bit further to see how can we best bring this home for our kids, and make sure that we're making things as rich as possible in our curriculum and their learning experiences in the classroom.
Do you have specific classes that you're going to be implementing or experimenting with?
We're going for the freshman academy, so we're going to try to get a team. And
so it'll be across the board as far as like history, English,
yes,
math.
Yes, well, we're still soliciting some volunteers. We have to win the award, which we expect to hear in August. But we have some, we have some leads and people who we know will be likely candidates. So, that's the intent.
that grading for equity?
What do they call which, I'm sorry?
The proposed experiment, grading for equity.
That is, there is a textbook, a book that is part of that, and that's part of the conversation.
So, read more updates, social emotional program implementation.
Good evening, everyone. So the next thing we'll talk about, I'll start by being that we're following on the budget presentation, is that this is a free initiative by the State Department of Education. So we are fortunate enough to get asked to apply for it. We have spent a great deal of time, energy, and effort on training our teachers and supporting our students, particularly during the pandemic and upon a return, in social, emotional, and their needs. And we have seen, I think, far greater than what we could have ever anticipated, the social emotional needs of our students and, quite frankly, of our faculty as well this school year. And so this tool is a little bit different. It will provide us with an assessment, so it's considered a universal screener for students' social emotional strengths. So what are the areas that students possess that are positive, that will help them to be productive students and good members of society? And then where are areas that they might fall short on that we need to teach them? Just as we would teach students letters and numbers, we also need to teach students social emotional skills. And so this program will provide us an opportunity to use a district-wide tool to assess students. And we've never done that before, right? We size up kids, we get to know them really well, we kind of identify the students that may need a little bit more, but it hasn't been done based on a research-proven tool. And so the assessment is called, the company is called Aperture, and the assessment is the DESA, and it's the Devereaux, I always have to look, Student Strengths Assessment. And so there's two different assessment tools. One tool is used K-8, and the second tool is used with high school age students. And so what the tool does is it provides a 1-minute screener that a faculty member, so a school staff member that knows a student well, completes. And that initial screener then kind of buckets kids into who are students that seem kind of within the typical age level for that skill, who are students that are above average in that skill, and who are students that may need some support. There's then a follow-up, more detailed assessment that can be given at the elementary and middle school level. It's given by an adult. At the high school level, there's two versions. It's given by an adult, and then the student gets their own screener. And so then we're able to really dig deeply and look at skills that students might need more support in. The tool also gives us the ability to progress monitor kids. So after we've provided some support, instruction, and intervention, have they made progress? Just as we would progress monitor a student in reading or mathematics. So I'm very excited about bringing this to district. I think this will give us some data that I can bring back to this group and share on where our students are at, where are some skills that we see a need. It also dovetails really nicely with our school counseling curriculum that we're in the process of rewriting, so that we can start to look at deficits that we have across the district as well as strengths, and then provide some more strategic intervention and support in certain areas at certain grade levels. So with this, we're currently in the process of applying. Mr. Walston has given kind of the go-ahead to apply and move forward with it. And so we did hear back from the state. We've kind of been a provisional acceptance, but we haven't heard officially yet. And so in year one, we'll recruit about half of our schools to participate in this, and then in year two, it would be full district implementation. And so with that, there'll be a district level social emotional team that will be comprised of district level leaders as well as school leaders. And then every single school will have to have a school social emotional team that will kind of be the champions that get trained through this initiative to roll out this program to their school. So this will continue our heavy emphasis on the social emotional needs of our kids. And so the things that will be covered in this are, when we talk about social emotional skills, some people are like, what is that? So things like self-awareness, self-management, the ability to have social skills and social awareness with their peers, ability to develop relationships with others, responsible decision-making, personal responsibility, goal setting, and optimistic thinking. And those are directly aligned with the CASTLE model, which is a research-proven model for social-emotional learning that many of our programs are. So along with just the assessment, it's okay, after we identify where kids are at, so what do we do? And this program will provide us with some additional tools and strategies, lessons that we can use to target students and provide intervention and support. And the sole goal of this program really is around two things. One is to improve academic outcomes for kids by making them feel connected to school and connected to a positive learning environment, which is something we all strive to do. And the second is to provide equitable SEL access. As we know, not every kid needs the same thing, right? So this helps us to identify what kids need what, and then be able to intervene and progress monitor to see if we're making a difference. So more information we're hoping to hear sometime in July from the state, and this initiative would start with training between August and October. So I will continue to keep the team posted, but if there's any questions on the program or tool or rollout, please let me know.
Thank you, Bill. Hiring and onboarding staff.
So this is our busy season. You heard Superintendent Walston allude earlier to we're watching carefully departures and incoming folks. And so far today in teeing up the fall hiring, we've seen about 49 departures and about 45 new hires. So right now we're kind of running neck and neck here, although the new hires will certainly start to speed up again. At our elementary level, we're doing considerably less hiring than usual because we've had the movement of some of the elementary teachers due to the reduction in sections. So we've had less new hires in that area, but certainly we are doing some robust hiring, particularly in the STEM areas, in the middle school and at the high school. So that will certainly ramp up soon. In the meantime, while we were waiting for that to happen, we've filled summer school. To date, we have done about 90 staff members for summer school, so that's about 75 teachers plus another 15 ancillary staff. So those are largely, if not all right now, our own staff who need to be recharacterized, reclassified, and put into these new slots for summer school. So about 90 of those folks, about 100 in the special ed departments, special ed summer school, and then about another 110 folks that we have moved into Meets programs that run through our 21st C grant and the summer sensational programs. So we've done several hundred processing now. We've got summer school more or less locked down and ready to roll. And we are focused on new hires of teachers. We also are going to make a push this year with paraprofessionals. You might remember us saying over the course of last year, we've been had about 75 to 80 open paraprofessional spots this year. So we're going to be looking to be a little bit as aggressive as we can be in filling those. And so that's going to be an ongoing process. With regard to administrators, thank you to those of you who have been participating on our interview panels. The Broadview Principal Panel continues to go through the system, and we're working on that. In addition, we are preparing for the Danbury High School Assistant Principal opening. Those interviews will be ongoing in July. Reach Endeavor is one that we continue to kind of watch the pool. We're getting ready to put those together now for probably again sometime in July. And a new assistant principal opening at Broadview Middle School with the departure of one of our existing APs. So we'll be busy with middle school and high school hiring and with Reach Endeavor at the administrator level in the coming weeks. Between those items, we're going to head into negotiations. The big one this year is the teachers, obviously. Again, thank you to those who are intending to participate on that. We're going to have our first meeting tomorrow, and those negotiations will be late summer, fall, and they will really kind of amp up as the summer winds to a close. In addition, we'll also be doing the paraprofessionals and also the custodians, so it will be super busy, and my team is ready, so off we go.
Thank you, Kevin. And to wrap up the update, summer planning, John and Ed.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, when Kim said we're going into our busy season, she stole my opening. July and August are clearly the two busiest months in the school business office, and I think it's because we have to have everything ready, not when the students come back, but when the teachers come back. for their classrooms, and that's August 24th. So right now, principals, program leaders, the budgets are open, the new budgets, they're using them, they're ordering classroom materials and student supplies. And many times they're using bid pricing for that, low pricing. We participate in a number of multi-school bids with area school districts to get low prices, so that's going on. And then as materials are ordered, of course, in the schools, they have to get checked in and looked at, taken to the classrooms. After that, the invoices come into the business office for processing, so it's quite a bit to get done in a short period of time. Meanwhile, things like at the high school, the athletic director is doing all his ordering to get ready for the summer seasons, which begin in August before school starts. So that's going on, and over at the bus yard, all of our buses have to get re-inspected every year by the Department of Motor Vehicles, their commercial safety division. So they'll be looking underneath every bus and checking every engine, and they're not allowed on the road when school starts until they pass this inspection. Our transportation coordinator is making the new routes up for kids when they come back, as they've changed, many have changed buildings. Bus drivers will be practicing those routes. You'll see them out there as we get closer to school. So a lot of that is going on, and meanwhile, we'll also be doing all of our state reporting to the state ed department. There are a number of reports they like to get that show how things panned out this year. So busy time for us too. Happens every year.
Thank you, John.
John, just a quick question. I know we're at June 22nd today, so it's about 8 days left in the fiscal year. Last we spoke, you were feeling pretty positive that we would end up with a small amount of money left over at the end of the school year, and I just want to check in and see if there's any update on that.
Thank you, Kate. We're still waiting here for the health insurance piece. So like the month of May and June. We've worked with our consultant and we had an idea. It looks we're going to get really close. We do believe that we'll close even this year. If for some reason health insurance goes astray, we do have those reserves that we reach out to the city to request. John and myself have made the finance director aware of it. If it gets that point go up, we're watching it, and we'll get more as June 30 get there exactly where we fall. We believe strongly that we'll fall right in the black.
I know it's close. I just want to make sure. And will you guys be updating the board depending on what happens with that? So that we're aware of what's happening financially as well.
Yes.
I know we're off for the summer, but we're still paying attention. Thank you.
Make sure we're updated.
So this may have been the longest superintendent's report I've had all year. And I know this is crazy, but I want to ask Kelly if she can provide one more update. And this is frankly related to many offices, district offices, and this is Go Guardian and Beacon. And given that the mic is in front of Kelly, ask her, so I don't know if Mike also needs to provide an update, but you probably can take it all. I just want the board to be aware, and equally as important, our families aware. This is something that we're exploring, just kind of give an impact.
Sure, and Mike, please feel free to jump in. So Go Guardian is a software monitoring where we can have access to monitor the technology and the usage that our students are doing during the school day, and if using a district device outside of school hours as well. So what it does is it flags our tech department, our school administrators, myself and other members of central office, if a child is searching something inappropriate. So if there's, any type of inappropriate content on there, we are able to have access to who the student was, what exact time they searched it, what exact page they went to, and then we're able to follow up on it. So we've had a couple different instances where, some kids are just curious and are searching different things, and others are searching inappropriate, sites, trying to get into different things, and it enables us to intervene, to communicate with parents and let them know, so we can make sure that our school is monitoring the usage of our students' devices, but also families are monitoring at home. It also enables us to have conversations with students about what is appropriate, what is reliable information on the internet, and how they should be using their school-issued Chromebook device, whether it's inside or outside school hours. There is another piece that is a suicide screener, that if students are searching high-risk words or terms, it will also immediately alert the district to those, so we can intervene. And so we have also been able to follow up on a few of those, and we're currently exploring, how to monitor those, how best to follow up, and internally in the GoGuardian software, it keeps track of what the usage is, the alerts that are coming up, and then the district's response to those alerts.
Thank you, Bill. So I can just, because this is something we will be exploring over the summer, and just appreciating the impact that it can have on kids and families. Just wanted to make sure we got that out, but we can provide updates for the board as we continue to investigate and research these types of things. Chairperson Daly, this concludes our superintendent's report.
Are you sure?
Yes.
No more questions.
Okay. Any board member reports? Kate?
Thank you. First, I just wanted to say that Teresa and Louisa and myself were at the We Raise graduation last night. That is a phenomenal program. For those who don't know, that's our adult education program here in the district. Provides an opportunity for students who are looking to complete their high school diploma and be able to graduate, which opens, of course, many other opportunities for them. So I just want to give a little recognition to Terrence, who's the director for that program. He really makes that evening special for people who have worked very hard to get to where they are. So I also have a statement I'd like to read. And I want to preface this by saying that I am offering this statement in the spirit of transparency and partnership with everybody in the room. I'm concerned about some of the things that I'm reading in the paper, things I'm seeing at events, things I'm hearing at meetings. And I'm also hearing from parents and community members who are concerned and upset by behavior that they perceive as being increasingly political in nature, and which they also believe is starting to impede the work that we're doing around this table. I think it would be an abdication of my responsibility to the institution of this board to remain silent in the face of these concerns. It needs to be understood that we come to the table as a single unit of 11 people under the leadership and the voice of our board chair. We're board members when we sit at this table, and we're board members when we leave this table. So our actions outside of this space reflect on the board, whether they're supportive or unsupportive of our responsibilities and goals. And if there is ever a question or confusion for any board member about what is appropriate, we have 10 other individuals that can be asked, and we have an additional resource in CABE. We can bring forward meetings for our board to discuss roles and responsibilities and what is appropriate as representatives of the board. We've done it before, and I think it's clear we need to do that again. It's my hope, because this has been a very challenging time. We've had 3 new board members this year alone, and we are obviously, after tonight's presentation, facing a very difficult financial situation. So it is my hope that we'll come together as a board and keep the focus on our Danbury public school system and the work we need to do to support this district. It would be very unfortunate to permit behavior which moves us away from accomplishing those goals, and it would be very unfortunate for the health of this institution to see the spirit of rules selectively applied. We need to come to the table in cooperation and partnership, and We need to agree to operate by rules that keep it fair for everyone involved, regardless of who is in charge. We should not and cannot allow participation that makes this board political, because at that point, it's a matter of personal interest, and we're no longer operating in the interests of our students, our schools, or our community. Thank you.
Are there any other board member reports?
Not so much, thank you. A report, we had Superintendent Evaluation Committee meeting, and we had so many meetings, so I don't know which one. But anyway, there was a worksheet that the group was presented with. Some board members were not here and did not participate in the process. So what happened tonight was the contractual agreement for the superintendent was taken care. I am proposing, as chairperson of the Superintendent Evaluation Committee, that we hold off on the worksheet and discuss that in September, because that worksheet has to be completed and goes into the superintendent file. So since we did not have participation, I did not get the edit addition until late today. And once I get the edit position as chairperson of that committee, the process, then I will sit with the superintendent. We will go over the edit position that was made. If there's no objection to it, then I bring it to the full board. We agree on it, and then it goes into this record. So since I was not able to do that with the committee, I would just like to postpone only the worksheet at some point in August, that we can come back and have a full discussion and put that in the superintendent evaluation process.
So you want to
I
have,
don't need a motion.
no, I'm asking a question.
Yes.
So you just want to have, like, come together for another meeting to do those sheets and get them finished and then get them to you to discuss with?
Yeah, because the process is not going to move until I meet. We finalize that worksheet, and I meet with the superintendent and go over that worksheet. And I don't know what I know everyone is talking vacation, you know, but we need full board participation in doing this. Or the committee can just go over the additions that were made and then bring it to the full board. And we need to take care of this, because I've been talking about this ever since we started the process.
Is there a specific deadline? I know we have a deadline on certain things.
Yeah.
Is there a specific deadline for the worksheet, or that's just?
No, I don't think there's a deadline, because we've taken care of the contractual item. That has to be done by July 1st. Okay? So that was done. I'm just saying the worksheet was very important because it was edited. Okay? And we need to talk about that. You know, you might not agree with the editing part that someone else did, but as a group, we need to understand what we're editing and what we're saying. So, and I wanted to rewrite it was going in the file. The ink going in is file. So I'm just asking at some point, if somebody want to throw out a date when we can get together, the committee, I have no problem with that.
So you're talking about August?
I'm talking about everything.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Something.
And yeah, just if the committee is, I need 5 people. So we can go over the edit version of the worksheet. After 4th of July, I'll come up with a date. Okay. You
I
right?
typically take Wednesday, I keep Wednesdays open.
Okay. July, after 4th of July.
July, you say July 6th?
Are you around July?
Any other day but July 6th.
I can't hear what you're saying. Any other day? Okay, that'll work. Who else is on this meeting?
Me. So just,
Any day?
I just need a little bit of notice and I can let you know if I'll be there. Yes.
Okay, early or late would be better for you.
I Wednesdays are later, but I can make pretty much, I can make it.
Okay, good,
I'm
good,
some
good.
notes.
We're all set. Thank you all.
Okay. Anything else? Lisa, can you make the executive session motion?
I motion that the Board of Education convene an executive session to discuss personnel matters, present the tentative agreement with the Danbury School Nurse Association, possible action in public session.
Moved by